Hi there. So do you want to know what's the worst mistake you can make when taking a practice bar exam? You're probably thinking maybe it's peeking at your notes while taking a practice bar exam or running out of time on the MBE or the essay, but these are actually fixable. The worst mistake that you can possibly make is taking a practice bar exam at the wrong points in your study schedule. Hi, my name's Gracie Bowden and I'm with Brainscape. I'm also a lawyer and UCLA law grad who spent the last several years studying the secrets of successful bar takers. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to effectively take a practice exam. Now, taking practice exams is one of the best things that you can do to prepare for the bar. So let's get started. So here's tip number 1. Don't wait until you think you're ready. This is a fatal error, right? Why not wait until you think you're ready? Because you will never feel ready. You are not going to feel ready during bar prep, and you most likely are not going to feel ready on the day of the bar. So for the MBE alone, there's roughly 330 topics. And once you throw in essays, you're talking about 1,000-something rules that you need to know. So if you wait until you think you're ready, you're going to get right up to bar day and never have learned how the bar would like for you to apply the law on the exam, right? So make sure that you're taking practice exams early and often. Think of them as they actually are, right? As a practice exam. Think of them as pass-fail assignments that help you learn the law, not necessarily as a test of your knowledge. Now, the more evaluative piece will come later. Once you're later down in bar prep, you will start using practice exams to evaluate your progress. But at the very beginning, don't think, I'm going to just wait until I study a few more weeks and then it'll really be a test of my abilities, because then you'll run out of time, okay? In fact, a University of Chicago study said that when students took a practice exam that didn't know the material and then were able to study their errors, they actually did better than students who didn't take practice exams at all. So again, don't view them as a test of your abilities at the very beginning. View them as pass-fail assignments that will help you learn the law and what you need to know. So if you stop watching the video now, if you don't listen to anything else I say, remember this: start practicing early and often. So for tip number 2, this one may seem obvious, right? When you take a practice exam, try as best as you can to mimic test conditions. What does this mean? It means trying to be well rested. It means being in a place with fewer distractions. It means not checking Instagram every 5 minutes, right? Try as much as you can to mimic those test conditions. Why is this important? It's important to help you build stamina. Stamina is probably one of the hardest parts of the bar exam. Your brain is not used to concentrating at this level for this length of time, right? And it is a muscle. You have to do it to get good at it. You can't just think, I'm going to have a ton of caffeine on the day of the exam and my brain, and it will fuel me along with adrenaline. No, it will not, right? You have to really get your brain and your body into the habit of sitting and concentrating for that length of time. So to start out, what I would recommend is some smaller chunks. So potentially start out with that type of focus and concentration for 30 minutes. Then do an hour. Build up to an hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, up to that 3-hour MBE and essay block to really train your brain. But again, it's exhausting, right? So make sure that you're well rested. Make sure that you're doing it in those smaller chunks at first so you don't burn out. So now we're on to tip number 3, which is called the open book outline method. And this is a technique that was recommended to me by my professors and something that fellow students and I swear by. So here's how it works. For the first, say, month or so of bar prep, when you are doing a practice essay, treat this as an open book assignment. So the moment you start reading that question, have all your materials ready and start using those materials to outline an answer to the question. Don't try and test yourself on whether or not you think it's right. The test is, do you know where to look in your book? Does that sound familiar to you? Are you spotting the issues? But the reason this is really important is because you are building good habits, and and you're reinforcing the correct knowledge. You do not want to waste your time writing 10 wrong essays, right? Now, that will be important to evaluate later, but at the beginning, train yourself to write the correct answers. Train yourself using this open book method. And once you've gone through this for the first month, then you'll be ready to treat these as closed book evaluations. But not yet. So now we're on to tip number 4, which is keeping track of your weaknesses. This is a super important piece of information that if you don't do, things may not go well for you, right? So what does this mean? This means that anytime you are grading an essay or grading multiple choice, I know some of these metrics are built into bar prep, but do your own evaluation. When you get a question wrong, ask yourself, was it because I ran out of time? Did I not know the law? Have I never heard of this concept before? Did I read the question wrong? Did I read the answer wrong? Keep track of exactly why you're getting things wrong. And that way, you'll be able to fix those areas of weakness. So if you're consistently reading the question wrong, you're going to want to focus on better reading comprehension for questions, maybe doing some sort of highlighting, underlining, circling method, right? But really pay attention to what's going wrong, because those are your habits, and those are things that unless you fix, you will do on bar day. The other thing about this is, in terms of subject matter, right? You want to really focus on what's some low-hanging fruit. So say that you are getting 60% in contracts, but you're scoring an 80% on torts for MBE questions. It is going to be a lot more bang for your buck to bring up that 60% in contracts than it is to try and score 100% in torts. So make sure that you're studying most efficiently by highlighting and tracking those areas of weakness. Personally, I used a spreadsheet. Other people have different methods that they like to use, but it showed me progress over time, and so that's what I recommend. So now I'm on to my last tip number 5, which is use flashcards. Now, I know we at Brainscape, we talk about flashcards a lot, but there is a reason for this. Brainscape's flashcards are not like what you used in high school, which for me was a crumpled up index card that I used to find at the bottom of my backpack. Brainscape's flashcards use a sophisticated algorithm called spaced repetition that shows you material you don't know as well more often. So for example, if I don't know intentional torts as well, I will be able to see those cards 5 times more often than, say, negligence, which I do know well. This is super important for you, bar prep, because you're trying to learn all this information in 10 weeks. And so Brainscape has the most efficient method for you to quickly memorize the material. In fact, students who use Brainscape to memorize are able to do so in half the time than using other methods. So beyond that little quick Brainscape plug, let me show you a few ways that you can use flashcards for bar prep. A couple different ways. The first is to create flashcards for essay questions. How I generally did this was create a flashcard that says, if you get a mortgages question, if you get a question on homicide, here are the things that you need to think through. Here are the rules that you need to know, and quiz myself on the types of questions that I would see. The second way that flashcards are super useful is to make them for questions you get wrong. This honestly was probably one of the most helpful things that I did. I created one deck, and every time I got a card wrong, I would write the rule on a flashcard. It quickly became 300 cards, right? But I studied these cards up until the morning of the bar exam because I knew that this was the stuff I knew the least and kept consistently getting wrong. So Brainscape also has our own MBE deck. So we've got 2,500 cards that are formulated to show you exactly what you need to memorize for the MBE. And that's the last way in which Brainscape can help you. These cards were written by people who are not lawyers, as well as people from various law schools, and they're really designed with you in mind to make sure that you're not wasting any time in those 10, or if you're lucky, more weeks of bar prep. So if you're still there, thank you so much for listening. I'll quickly just recap. First tip is do not wait to take practice exams. Second tip is to mimic test conditions when you're taking these practice exams. Third is to use the open book outline method. Fourth tip is to keep track of your errors. And the fifth tip is to make flashcards using Brainscape's adaptive platform, as well as utilizing our MBE deck. I know this process is brutal, but you've got this. Hang in there and prepare to rise to your challenge.